When you think of North Korea, football probably isn't the first thing that comes to mind. The country's economic policies, combined with a shitload of international sanctions, have resulted in a pretty dire living situation. But in amongst all the political chaos and total isolation from the Western world, a footballing sensation had emerged in Han Kwang-song. The prodigious young attacker had caught the eye of some of world football's biggest clubs, being labelled as the North Korean Ronaldo, and was destined for an exciting career abroad after signing for Serie A club Cagliari at 18. Fast forward 2 years into his football journey, Han was then poached by Italy's biggest club, Juventus, an emphatic rise at such a young age. But sadly, geopolitics would soon derail Han's career. Due to continual UN sanctions imposed against North Korea, Han's contract became increasingly problematic. As a result, Juventus were forced to immediately sell to Qatari club Al Duhail for 7 million euros. Now, the Middle East certainly wasn't what the Wonder Kid had anticipated, but his future finally seemed secure, right? Well, no. Things then got really weird. After winning the Qatar Stars League in 2020, Han suddenly disappeared from professional football. For the next 3 years, there were no updates, nothing. This Wonder Kid had seemingly vanished with no official confirmation on his whereabouts. A depressing reality. But 3 years later, out of the blue, the latest chapter in this bizarre tale unfolded. A World Cup qualifier, Syria versus North Korea. And guess who was on the pitch that day? None other than Han Kwang-song. To put it mildly, this situation is completely bonkers, full of twists, turns, and political complications. This is the ill-fated story of the North Korean Wonder Kid. When it comes to essentially any information from within North Korea, access is severely limited, and Han's upbringing is no exception. There is no way of knowing the full extent of Han's story growing up, but we do know that his footballing roots began at the Pyongyang International Football School, the nation's prized footballing institution, with Han viewed as their star pupil. The young striker had both exceptional speed and technical ability. He was so good, in fact, that his own government literally paid for him to receive training overseas, developing at the Academy in Barcelona, an environment where Han thrived in. He briefly returned home before departing for the Asian U16 Championships in 2014. North Korea surprisingly made it out of the group stages in that tournament, with Han scoring in every single match. They proceeded to knock out Iran, followed by Australia, setting up a mammoth final clash against who else but arch-enemy South Korea. Now that right there is a rivalry. Han was the star in the final, getting on the score sheet in a historic 2-1 victory, taking home the trophy. Shortly after, Han moved to Italy to join the ISM Academy in a bizarre student visa deal brokered by the North Korean Football Association alongside Italian Senator Antonio Razzi. Razzi had previously met Kim Jong Un, somehow becoming friendly in the process, and wanted to help guide the nation's star footballing talent. Now, due to FIFA regulations regarding underage players, Han was ineligible to join a pro team, so he remained at the ISM Academy till he was 18. By then, he was in high demand. Liverpool and Manchester City desperately wanted to sign him. In fact, Liverpool personally sent their chief scout Barry Hunter to meet with Han and convince him to join. This encounter didn't go according to plan. Part of Hunter's pitch included offering Han the chance to meet club icon Steven Gerrard if he agreed to sign. But ironically, Han had absolutely no idea who Gerrard was. In fairness to the kid, he grew up in North Korea. He'd probably never even heard of Liverpool prior to this meeting. Growing up in North Korea is the real-life equivalent of living under a rock. Liverpool were ultimately unable to persuade Han, who instead opted to join Serie A club Cagliari, becoming the first North Korean and Asian to ever play for the club. Han would earn the minimum federal income required for a professional footballer in Italy's top flight, 1,500 euros a month, which would be deposited directly into Han's personal bank account. But this is where the trouble began. You see, the UN had placed heavy sanctions on North Korea to suppress the nation's nuclear project, which included an embargo on issuing visas for North Koreans, making poor old Han's life very challenging. It's estimated that the North Korean government takes roughly 80% of their overseas workers' wages. So it wasn't the most politically correct or legally sensible decision for a club to inadvertently fund the regime. A parliamentary investigation was carried out to closely monitor the payment of Han's wages. However, no action was taken on his case at the time, meaning Han could legally play for his new club. On the pitch, things were going great. On his first day at Cagliari, he scored a hat-trick in a friendly training match and progressed from the U19 squad to the first team over the course of his first season in Italian professional football. In April of 2017, Han made history by becoming the first North Korean to ever play in the Serie A, coming off the bench against Palermo in a 3-1 victory. A week later, another milestone was achieved when Han scored his first ever Serie A goal, courtesy of a bullet header against Joe Hart's Torino. Han's debut season in Italy was considered a success, making 5 appearances in total. The following campaign, Han was sent on loan to Perugia in the Serie B to gain regular first-team football, and the North Korean got off to a flyer, scoring a brilliant hat-trick on his league debut, and by December, he'd already racked up 10 goal contributions in just 19 games. This kid was a genuine baller in the making. His form at Perugia was so impressive that his loan was cut short in January so that he could return back to Cagliari's first team. He'd make a further 7 appearances for Cagliari before rejoining Perugia on loan once again. After 2 successful loan spells at the club, he'd accumulated a total of 11 goals, 5 assists, and he was still a teenager. His development was fascinating. Everyone wanted to know more about this mysterious wonderkid. He'd caused a media stir within Italy, but gaining access to the striker became next to impossible. According to Perugia's club president Massimiliano Santapadre, he was literally banned from public TV appearances, with the North Korean regime threatening deportation if he were to stage any future interviews. The only place where Han could do his talking was on the pitch. Around the same time, North Korea continued to face global condemnation and sanctions as a result of their persistent testing of short-range ballistic missiles. Kim Jong Un was straight up disrespecting the North Korean Ronaldo with his antics. But despite the increased political tensions, Han had caught the eye of Italy's biggest club, Juventus, with the Bianconeri and manager Maurizio Sarri in particular a massive fan of the player. A deal was agreed with Han signing on an initial 2-year loan spell with an obligation to buy. In a written post on the ISM Academy website where Han first settled in Italy, he stated, "To dress such an important shirt as Juventus, my dream came true." Following this notable transfer, Italian media and government bodies addressed their concerns about this contract, questioning the legality of financing a North Korean citizen. But Juventus stated that any UN sanctions imposed wouldn't be applicable to Han. Exceptions had been made for specific cases that involved international sport, with Han supposedly falling into this category. So Han spent the next 6 months in Turin, making 17 appearances for Juve's U23 side, training frequently with the first team, and even making the bench on 2 occasions. In January of 2020, Juventus officially completed the purchase of Han Kwang-song for 3.5 million euros. But this transfer involuntarily marked the end of Han's Juventus career. The UN immediately intervened and even threatened sanctions against the club. Juve got the message, and to the club's credit, they were swift in striking a deal elsewhere, securing a transfer to Qatari outfit Al Duhail for 7 million euros. How Juve managed to sell Han for twice as much money as they purchased him for in the space of 6 days, with the UN simultaneously threatening sanctions, I mean, that whole transfer deal was pure madness. Regardless, Han's career had taken a massive turn, but surely in the Middle East, he would be able to play his football in peace and without the constant threat of UN intervention. Well, initially, it appeared that way. Han settled well into Qatar, scoring 4 goals in 10 matches that season, a solid contribution in Al Duhail's eventual title success. He can even be seen celebrating their league title victory on the final day of the season, but this was the last image ever taken of Han playing club football. The following preseason, Han didn't show up to training. He had been completely erased from Al Duhail, with no news emerging of any transfer or his association with the club. 6 months went by with no news until a report from the United Nations was released, confirming that Han's contract had been terminated with Al Duhail and that he was deported from Qatar. But he didn't return to his native country. No, there was no way he could have legally entered it because North Korea's borders were completely restricted due to COVID regulations. No one could get in or out of the country. According to CNN, he instead took a flight to Rome, temporarily staying with his management before being taken to the North Korean embassy. And that was the only verifiable sources on the matter. The rest from 2021 onwards was purely speculation. But he definitely wasn't playing professional football in Italy or elsewhere. His entire life had fundamentally been taken away from him. It's a genuine pity. But 2 years later, a shock update arrived. During the latest international break, against all odds, something interesting actually happened during that period. When after 3 years of vanishing from world football, Han Kwang-song suddenly reappeared in a World Cup qualifier against Syria, donning the number 10 for his country. North Korea lost that game 1-0, but in their following qualifier against another powerhouse nation, Myanmar, Han bagged a goal and an assist in a 6-1 demolition. Even after being banished from the sport for over 3 years, he's still got it. There are rumors circulating that upon Han's recent return to North Korea, he signed for April 25 Sports Club. Yes, that is the club's official name. In fact, they're actually the reigning champions of the North Korean Premier Football League. On one hand, it's a relief that he's alive and actually playing football in 2023, although I can't help but feel sorry for him. Sorry that geopolitics took away his dream move to Juventus. Sorry that institutions that have no real connection to football dictated his livelihood. I mean, let's be real here. There are far greater problems that the UN should prioritize ahead of this. But that's just my 2 cents on the situation. Anyways, what are your thoughts on the North Korean Ronaldo? It's one of football's weirdest stories in recent memory, so let me know in the comments below. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you next time.